When I think of comfort foods, one of the foods that comes to mind is meatloaf. On today's video, I'm going to share with you my recipe for Italian-style meatloaf that's moistened with ricotta cheese and studded with fresh chunks of mozzarella. Absolutely delicious and super moist. Let's get started. Let's go over some of the ingredients we're going to be using. Today I'm using ground beef. And this is about 2.5 pounds of ground beef. You don't have to use beef only. You could use a combination of ground meats. You can use turkey if you don't want to do the beef thing. You could use a combination of pork, lamb, and beef. But today I'm just sticking with the beef. And this, as you can see, very little fat. And if you have a butcher, you can request how lean you want your ground meat. So we're starting off with our meat. We're also starting off with some dry day-old chunks of bread. We're going to be using that to moisten. We're going to be soaking this bread and we're going to use it to moisten. Like I said earlier, ricotta cheese, mozzarella cheese, Parmesan cheese, parsley, scallions, which is a little unusual too, but I feel like this is a vegetable that doesn't really get used that often, and I think it's a very flavorful addition to this recipe, so we're using that, and a couple of eggs. And then after we prepare this meatloaf, I'm going to show you a sauce, a simple sauce to serve on the side. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is take our bread, and I have about 2 cups of milk here, and we're just going to soak our bread, our stale bread, in the milk for a few minutes. Okay, and we're going to put that aside. We're going to take our ground beef, and I like using a very large bowl so I can really get into, the mixing of it. A lot of this now, you can use your hands, you can use a spatula, a wooden spoon, whatever you feel most comfortable. I personally like using my hands. So to that, I'm going to get 3 large eggs, and I'm going to slightly beat them. And this, of course, adds as a binding agent to your meatloaf. And we're gonna add that to our beef. Okay. Next, I'm gonna add about maybe a cup of chopped parsley. I'm going to add about a cup of scallions. And the recipe, a cup and a half, you could use less. Unlike baking, it's very forgiving and it's really to taste. Some grated Parmesan cheese. I would use about a cup and a half. I'm going to start off, I will use my hands as I said earlier, but I'm going to start off with the spatula and I'm just going to combine those ingredients. Okay, we're going to definitely mix this more. Set that aside. Our bread, I'm going to make sure the bread is well soaked, and I'm going to wring out as much of the milk as possible. I want moistened bread. I don't want that much milk in my ground beef mixture. And when I put it into the bowl, I want to sprinkle it and sort of break it up because I don't want to have chunks of bread. I want it to be evenly distributed throughout. And you try doing this without getting milk everywhere. I try to be neat. Okay. I'll give that a mix, and I'm going to add the rest of the bread to it. The amount of bread, I really look at it, I eyeball it according to the amount of meat. So like I said, it's about this recipe is about 2.5 pounds of ground beef. It's based on how many people you plan on feeding with it. But then again, leftover meatloaf to me is like one of the best things in the world to make sandwiches and just to snack on. Okay, so you combine your bread, the herbs, and your cheese. So then we want to salt and pepper it. Generous amount of pepper. Salt, on the other hand, not so much, because we have added the Pecorino Romano cheese or the Parmesan cheese, which is a little on the salty side. So I would go sparingly with the salt. Next, we're going to add the ricotta cheese. I have about, I think this is like 30 ounces. I don't think we're gonna need all of it, but what I would add is maybe half. I'll start off with half. Maybe a little more than half. So maybe like 18 ounces. And this ingredient, adding the ricotta cheese, really, really moistens this meatloaf when it bakes. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. I know I say that about everything I make, but how could it not be delicious though, when you think about the ingredients that we're adding in here? And again, if you, for some reason, cannot eat beef, or you don't eat beef and dairy together, you can easily substitute this with turkey, ground turkey. Want to make sure it's well combined. Add a little more. Okay, I'm going in. I'm going to use my hands. Of course, perfectly clean hands, always. And you want to combine it well. The next step, and the last step, is adding your chunks of mozzarella cheese. You don't want to over mix it at this point. You just want to sort of evenly distribute throughout the mixture the cheese. So I'll add a little bit and I'll combine. And the idea is so that it's throughout the loaf. When you go to cut it, each piece that you cut has chunks of the mozzarella cheese. And you could just only imagine what that's going to look like and taste like. So how much? I would say about, again, I'm eyeballing it, but about 2 cups of cubed mozzarella cheese should do it. Okay, we're ready to make our loaf. So I'm using a 9x13 baking pan. You could use a larger pan. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get a little olive oil, and with a brush, I'm just going to brush the bottom of the pan so there's an even coating of olive oil. And then I'm going to turn my meatloaf mixture into my pan, and I'm going to form the loaf right into the pan. And what I'm trying to do is make a loaf that's even, so that when it cooks evenly. You guys are going to be in for a very big surprise when you cut into this. Okay. So there we have our loaf. And then before I put it in the oven, I'm going to take some more of the olive oil and just lightly brush over the top of it so that as it bakes, it creates a crust, keeping the inside very, very moist and the outside crispy. The oven is preheated at 375 and it's going to be baked for about 45 minutes or so, covered with foil. I'm going to take the foil off and then I'm going to continue baking it for about an hour and a half. Okay, it's ready to go in. Okay, next I'm going to show you a very simple sauce that we can make to accompany our meatloaf. The ingredients are very, very basic. Diced tomatoes, diced celery, diced carrots, and diced onion. A few bay leaves and some red hot chilies. Let's go over to the stove and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so now we're going to make our sauce to go with our meatloaf. Starting off with some olive oil. And like I said, it's a very, very simple, basic sauce. We want the olive oil nice and hot. We're going to add our onion. And here I have about like a medium-sized onion. Maybe it's an onion and a half. Anytime I make a sauce, I like adding a little heat and a little spice to it. I have these are actually cayenne peppers that I grew in the garden, and I dry them in the fall. I like using those. Sometimes I don't even break them, I just open it in half and just throw it in. And like I said, it adds a little spice to the sauce. You could easily eliminate these. I like it spicy. Then you're going to add about a cup and a half of diced carrots. Actually, they're shredded carrots. And a lot of times when I'm making the sauce or anything that I'm cooking, I don't, even though there are most recipes have set ingredients, I do it by eye and proportion. So the amount of carrots that I like to see compared to the amount of onion. I'm not going to add all the carrots. Then I'm going to add the celery. And here I have about a cup and a half of celery. I think I will add it all. Some salt, and some fresh pepper. And you want to cook this for about 5-10 minutes until all the vegetables are softened. I'm going to add a few bay leaves. I like cooking with bay leaves. These are dried. I added about 3 dried medium-sized bay leaves. If you have fresh bay leaf, I would only use 1. It's a much stronger, pronounced taste. And the fresh leaf has a lot of oil that releases into the vegetable mixture, so you would only need 1. Now the next step is to add the tomatoes, but because the vegetables aren't completely cooked, and I want the vegetables to almost break down once I add the tomatoes, I'm not going to add the tomatoes just yet. Tomatoes, as you know, is an acid-based ingredient, and by adding it, it actually stops the vegetables from cooking. Instead, what I'm going to do is add some water. and it allows the vegetables to continue to cook. As you can see, a lot of the liquid has reduced and evaporated. So now I'm going to add our diced tomatoes, and this is about 12 ounces of diced tomato. You could use canned, you could use fresh tomatoes. And this is going to create a very flavorful sauce. And this will cook for about 20-25 minutes. I will then remove the bay leaf and the cayenne peppers. Okay, so it's been in the oven for about an hour and a half, uncovered, and I just took it out, and look how beautiful it is. It has a crust on the outside, and I could just tell by transferring it into this plate that it's very moist on the inside. I do suggest, before you remove it from your pan, to test the interior temperature. It should be 160 degrees. And I would also allow it to sit for about 10 minutes before trying to transfer it from your pan into your plate. Okay, now I'm going to serve it. I personally like the end piece. You can see perfectly cooked, perfectly moist. We're going to use the sauce that we made, which has thickened. And if you'd like, you could put a little ricotta on the side. A sprig of parsley, and you have the most delicious comfort meal you can possibly dream of. It looks and smells incredible. I was right, the best meatloaf I've ever had. It's very, very moist, very, very flavorful. You really need to give this a try. I hope you liked this video and are willing to give this recipe a try. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, click the like button, and hit the notification bell so you'll know when the next video is up. Until next time.